Shalom. Hope you guys are having a great feast season. I'm Brother Doug as always with my mom, Sister Sharon. And
Sorry.
no, it's okay. That's my fault. Um, and we got Brother Yahusha and Brother Dennis. And we are the Wakened by Yahuwah Assembly and Yahuwah Almighty Yahusha Messiah. We are going to be doing today our book of Proverbs reading. So we're going to be going to Proverbs 11 to 13. My mom is going to start us off here whenever you're ready, Mom.
Okay. Yahuwah abhors dishonest scales, but accurate weights are his delight. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. The righteousness of the blameless makes a straight way for them, but the wicked are brought down by their own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by evil desires. When a wicked man dies, his hope perishes. All he expected from his power comes to nothing. The righteous man is rescued from trouble, and it comes on the wicked instead. With his mouth, the godless destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge, the righteous escape. When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. When the wicked perish, there are shouts of joy. Through the baraka of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked, it is destroyed. A man who lacks judgment derides his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his tongue. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy man keeps a secret. For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but many advisors make victory sure. He who puts up security for another will surely suffer, but whoever refuses to strike hands in pledge is safe. A kind-hearted woman gains respect, but ruthless men gain only wealth. A kind man benefits himself, but a cruel man brings himself harm. The wicked man earns deceptive wages, but he who sows righteousness reaps a sure reward. The truly righteous man attains life, but he who pursues evil goes to his death. Yahuwah detests men of perverse heart, but he delights in those whose ways are blameless. Be sure of this, the wicked will not go unpunished, but those who are righteous will go free. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. The desire of the righteous ends only in good, but the hope of the wicked only in wrath. One man gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. People curse the man who hoards grain, but barakas frown him who is willing to sell. He who seeks good finds goodwill, but evil comes to him who searches for it. Whoever trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. He who um I just can't read the word because I have
What
something.
verse are you at? 30?
29. He who
29.
brings trouble on his family,
Will inherit only
there we
wind.
go. Well, yeah, right. Okay, that's it. Will inherit only wind. And the righteous is a tree of life, and he who wins souls is wise. If the righteous receive their due on earth, how much more the ungodly and the sinner?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so pretty much self-explanatory there. The difference between the blameless, the righteous, and the wicked. And this is one of the chapters here you kind of see a lot of misconceptions of what we've been taught in the church. Like there's no more wrath, that,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what we do, we don't have wrath on us, which is, another misconception due to the certain Bibles that people read from and all that as long as you confess Yahusha, there's no wrath for you,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what you do. Um, and so a lot of people get false understandings like that from the church
Mm-hmm.
upbringing, where you clearly see that there's certain things Yahuwah hates, and anyone that does them, Yahuwah is not partial. He's not going to be partial to you or to anyone just because we're in the faith that we get a pass. He might show favor to us for doing certain things unintentionally and stuff like that, but doesn't mean that we can just willy-nilly sin on purpose for the rest of our lives and be covered by his blood.
That's right.
So yeah. Hope placed in mortals die with them. All the promise of their power comes to nothing. So a lot of this has to do with who to trust in. Also, this chapter talks about that. Trust in Yahuwah, not man. Trust in Yahuwah, not riches. Um, yeah, yeah. And I think the verse 13 um, is definitely an important one. Gossip. I
Oh,
would
yes.
say there has to be a context to that though. What gossip actually is putting someone down behind their back, versus, informing someone of a situation. I don't consider that gossip. I don't think the scriptures consider that gossip. Just informing a brother or sister of a situation in the past that happened, informing them of what went down is not essentially of itself gossip. So I think there's a lot of confusion in the body right now of what gossip actually is. If you actually look into the dictionary, even about what gossip is, gossip's always connected to slander. It's always connected to putting someone down, to talk bad about someone behind their back. That's gossip.
Yeah.
Uh, Versus, if a brother or sister wasn't there for a situation, an altercation of maybe a offense that happened and letting them know what happened, is not the same thing. So hopefully I explained that as adequately as I possibly can. You can't consider every situation gossip just because the both parties are not there to hear it. Because that's been the assumption from the church upbringing, is that even when you're not talking bad about someone, but you're just talking about a situation, the both parties have to be there, and they claim that scripture says that when it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that at all. When you're bringing the Matthew 18 situation for a perfect example, is that gossip? No. So is both parties there for every step of the Matthew 18? No. So anyway, so you're gonna have situations where they're individually one-on-one. One brother's talking to the person at fault, then another brother is talking to the person at fault one-on-one, separate from the first person. then you bring that person at fault before the group. So obviously, not everyone that was involved is talking to one another when those situations are happening. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I saw an interesting difference in verse 30. The Septuagint versus the Masoretic.
Right. Let's see here.
Completely
You
changed
said
the narrative.
get there here. So brothers said verse 30.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. Yeah.
What's the difference?
Out of the fruit of righteousness grows a tree of life, but the souls of the sinners or transgressors are cut off before their time.
Oh.
Which would explain why the wicked die at a younger age than a lot of the righteous.
Mm-hmm.
We see this today. We have family members that,
Yeah. Oh,
have
yeah.
died at 40, 50.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, even in modern day standards, if you're dying at 40, 50 years old, that's before your time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even in
Yeah.
secular standards, that
I believe that.
yeah, there's proof of it in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That this is something that happens. And this is why Yahuwah says in Exodus 20, to brother Yahusha's point, you'll, I think it's Exodus 20 or one of the verses in the Torah says, okay, you obey me, you're going to have a long life. You honor your parents, you're going to have a long life. Don't do those things, you're going to have a short life, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
You could assume from that. People that don't respect their parents, people that don't do this, don't do that. By default, Yahuwah is not going to give them a long life.
Yeah.
So, and I think verse 31 you were also talking about too, bro. I forgot about that. So this is a direct quote from Kepha here. You can't find this in the Masoretic. If the righteous be scarcely saved, where shall the wicked and the sinner appear? So you can't find this in the Masoretic. It's not there. I think, brother, this is what you were pointing to too.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, certain versions have the LXX version of this. The New Heart English Bible has it. I don't know if yours does, the NIV. I don't know if they have the LXX version in verse 31.
The restored name King James seems to have it.
How much more the ungodly and the sinner?
Right here.
If the righteous receive their due on earth,
Yeah.
much more. It's kind of like
It's the Masoretic version.
Yeah.
So the Masoretic version, just to show everyone here, in verse 31 says the righteous, if the righteous shall be repaid in the earth, how much more the wicked and the sinner. So the Masoretes completely changed this verse.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been before the Masoretes. Let me just check here. It could have been before them. But the Aramaic has, yeah. So this would have been changed like in the early first century, possibly, that this verse was changed. And it completely contradicts what Kepha says. What Kepha says is what the LXX says. What Peter says, if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the wicked and the sinner appear?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if we're barely saved by Yahusha, what will happen to the wicked?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So that's kind of the point there. So, yeah, this is the major difference in this version here. So, if you have a decent Bible app, it'll show you in the cross reference 1 Peter 4:17-18. So people always ask me, how do you know that Yahusha used the Septuagint? This is one of the examples, because his apostles are being inspired by his Ruach, right? We believe that Kepha and all of them, there's some those of us that believe their letters are scripture and they're breathed by Yah. That means that Yahusha inspired Kepha and them to quote from the Septuagint. Hence, Yahusha would not inspire them to quote from something that he did not think is legitimate. So he inspired Paul to quote from the Septuagint. The majority of Paul's letters works are quoting from the Septuagint, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people will ask me, how do I know that this is the version of the scriptures they used? Well, they're quoting from it. So anyway. So go ahead, brother.
No, that's an old hand.
Oh, okay. I wasn't too sure because I had my screen away, so I wasn't too sure. So I think that's it, right, Mom? Was there anything else to bring out of this chapter?
I don't think so.
Oh, well, obviously the tree of life thing is very interesting because fruit works of the righteous. They're a tree of life, and Yahusha, a lot of the times spiritually, is allegorized as the tree of life. So that's kind of interesting because, right, who do we bear our fruits to? Him. He talks about, I've chosen you for you to bear fruit. So to me, that's very interesting. Um, want to make sure we're not. Oh yeah, verse 22 is a big thing too, and I know a lot of. I know my mom when she first came into the walk here would not like verse 22 because there's times where Solomon is very very candid about um you know the strange women and all that. Like a gold ring and a pig snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. So a lot of women out there would take this offensively because he's basically calling a whore a pig. He's basically, and I think whoever wrote certain books like Sirach knew of Solomon's letters because similar things are in like the apocryphal book of Ecclesiasticus. I forget what it says. I think it says like it basically calls a whore a female dog. So there's some similarities between Solomon's works and whoever wrote Sirach. They had similar beliefs about that. So anyway, I find that interesting. Um, and right here, it even says Yahuwah delights in verse 20 in those whose ways are blameless is who Yahuwah delights in. So we've been told that Yahuwah delights in everyone. He loves everyone. He loves the whole world, this and that. But Yahuwah actually loves the righteous. And I think where we get confused is the Romans 5 verse where it says, while we isolated group of people, we were sinners, past tense, Yahuwah loved us. So a lot Christianity takes that Romans 5, I think it's from Romans 5 or something, builds a whole new doctrine around it that Yahuwah loves all sinners. That's not the case. You're not going to find that in the Tanakh anywhere. And even Paul's not saying that. He's saying while we isolated group of people were sinners, Yahuwah loved us. Meaning Yahuwah loved his elect, his chosen, while they were sinners. Not that he loved the whole world while they were sinners. So I think that's a misconception in that Romans verse, in my opinion. That's a big misconception. Trying to think of other themes in this that show here and show that we have been misinformed about what is righteous and what is Yahuwah's character. Um, So this talks about collateral in this verse here in verse 15. It's talking about becoming collateral for another. Deceptive wages is another big theme in this chapter. Basically you're earning money deceptively, which I guess what would that be in today's age? That would be what, lying to get hired
The,
or deceiving your boss. I'm trying to.
Oh yeah, I've known people that have bosses will do things like that sometimes if they like an individual. They'll put time in for them that they were never
Yeah.
even there.
Well, I don't think that's what this is talking about.
Okay,
This is
all
talking
right.
about earning deceptive wages, meaning you, the worker, are doing something deceptive of yourself. You
Mhm.
are doing something deceptive to earn a wage. So, for example, like if I'm not 16 yet, right, and I want a job so bad to help my family out, I lie. I do a
Mhm.
little fib and say I'm of age to start working when
Mhm.
I'm not. That's earning a deceptive wage. Or lying on an interview saying I can work weekends when you know you're not working on the Sabbath. That's earning deceptive wages. You intentionally are lying to earn a wage. That to me, that's what I think in context Solomon is talking about here. Because the deception, what you're talking about, is on the bosses, and
Yeah,
that would be
yeah,
sin to the boss, not you. He's
yeah.
lying to hire you.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
you know, it's like he's lying himself. He's sinning so that he can hire you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so that I think that's about it. So now we got chapter 12 here. Okay. Oh, let's see here. Do we have any takers for chapter 12 here? Um, Brother Dennis, would you like to read chapter 12?
Proverbs chapter 12.
Yeah.
Okay. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. The good obtains favor from Yahweh, but the man of wicked devices he declares wrong. The man is not established by wrongness, but the root of the righteous shall not be moved. A capable wife is the crown of her husband, but one causing shame is like rottenness in his bones. The thoughts of the righteous are right ruling. The counsels of the wrong are deceit. The words of the wrong are lie in wait for blood, but the mouth of the straight delivers them. The wrong are overthrown and are no more, but the house of righteous stands. The man is praised according to his wisdom, but the perverted of heart becomes despised. Better be lightly esteemed and have a servant than the highly esteemed who lacks bread. The righteous regards the life of his beast, but the compassion of the wrong is cruelty. He who tills his land is satisfied with bread, but he who pursues vanities is lacking heart. The wrong shall covet the catch of evildoers, but the root of the righteous yields fruit. And the transgression of the lips is an evil snare, but the righteous gets out of distress. From the fruit of his mouth one is filled with tow, and the work of a man's hands is given back to him. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he who listens to advice is wise. Fool's wrath is known at once, but a clever one covers shame. He who speaks truth declares righteousness, but a false witness deceit. Rash speaking is like piercing of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is healing. The lip of truth is established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Deceit is in the heart of those who plot evil, but counselors of peace have joy. No harm befalls the righteous, but the wrong shall be filled with evil. Lying lips are an abomination to Yahweh, but those who deal truly are his delight. The clever man is concealing knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims folly. The hand of the hard worker rules, but the lazy is put to compulsory labor. Anxiety in the heart of man causes depression, but a told word makes him glad. The righteous is a guide to his neighbor, but the way of the wrong leads them astray. The lazy one has no game to roast, but the hard worker prizes his possessions. In the way of righteousness is life, and in its pathway there is no death.
I just wanted to say something about 22. Lying lips are an abomination to Yahuwah. It's really funny because when I first came into Torah, and you're trying to examine yourself and you're trying to make sure you're not, doing anything lawless. And I'll tell you, the first thing I noticed was about like little fibs and things. And I would be like checking myself, if Douglas repeated something I might have told him or something. I'm like, did I tell him the full truth? Did I tell him everything about that? And I would be, I was really convicted about that because that was the first thing I noticed that was even a little bit like, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's the first thing that I noticed, is like, I think when we're out there, not living in Torah, we to get out of problems like trouble, not wanting to be seen as unfeeling to people. We'll let little fibs go by. We'll let little things, little untruths go by. And to me, like it was the first thing that I noticed that I was very much working on when I first came into Torah.
Yeah. All right. Let me just see here. So we got I want to look at I think there should be a difference here in verse 1 because I find it very weird that it keeps using knowledge and it seems to be talking about wisdom, but they translate it as knowledge. Let me just see here. I have a feeling it's either a mistranslation or it's a difference between the manuscripts here because yeah. See, this is the interesting part. So yours says whoever loves discipline loves knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
This makes sense a little bit more. It says, he that loves instruction loves sense, but he that hates correction is a fool.
Mm.
So what it's saying is what type of discipline is talking about? It's talking about instruction, it's talking about Torah. So he that loves the Torah loves sense, but he that hates reproofs is a fool. So just from the difference in the English there, it makes a little bit more sense what's talking about, what type of knowledge it's talking about. Because, a Gnostic would look at that verse and say, well, see, yeah, we idolize knowledge. So, yada, yada, yada. They would, like a Gnostic or a philosopher would look at that like, yeah, we do love knowledge, but but it depends what type of knowledge are you talking about, you know? And so also the Yahuwah is not saying to idolize knowledge. He's not saying to covet knowledge in that verse. He's saying discipline would have to do with Yahuwah's flogging. It would have to do with Yahuwah's correction. So it's important to look at verses like 12 verse 1 in the context of the rest of scripture. But I just noticed the Masoretic likes to use the word knowledge a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like wisdom's a little different from knowledge.
Yes, it is.
And wisdom is more about trying to use the right. Let's see, this Greek word can even mean perception. That's interesting. Oh, discernment, it's supposed to say.
Wow.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. So what it really should say, even from the Septuagint, is go back to the reference here. So what it should say in the English, it should say, he that loves instruction loves discernment, but he that hates corrections is a fool. So the second word is actually supposed to be discernment, if I'm not mistaken. Right here.
So that's very
so if you love instruction of the Torah, you love his instructions, you love his law, you will love discernment. That's what it's saying, which is a huge difference from what the Masoretic seems to say. General knowledge, there's righteous knowledge and demonic knowledge. So, it's a little too vague for me in the Masoretic. Let's see. He who found favor with Yahuwah is made better, or made with. He who has found favor with Yahuwah is better, but a transgressor shall be passed over in silence. Interesting. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but as a worm in wood, so a bad woman destroys her husband. The thoughts of the righteous are right ruling, but wicked men devise deceit. So that's talking about righteous men will think about right ruling. They will think about the Torah. The words of the wicked are crafty, but the mouth of the upright shall deliver them. Okay, so the wicked are overthrown, he vanishes away, but the houses of the righteous remain. And that's another thing you'll see too when you really get into the whole rapture topic. Rarely does Yahuwah ever say that he's removing the righteous from the earth. Rarely does Yahuwah ever, if ever say that. It's always the wicked that are removed. It's always. We're here to dwell in the earth. On this earth he created for us, not somewhere up in the sky in heaven. See, that's where the whole, pre-trib thing goes awry, is that number one, it's not supported by scripture. Number two, the whole concept that he's taking the righteous away from the earth does not match scripture. And even when you're talking about when the actual resurrection happens, they're not going away. They're not up to Yahuwah's throne room. So even when you look at what Second Thessalonians says, what Matthew 24, Matthew 13 say, it has nothing to do with going up into the heavenly realm. So Yahuwah is removing the wicked, and time it says he's removing them from the earth. He's removing them to put them in the lake of fire. And constantly it says that. In scripture. And this is one of the places it says that when the wicked are overthrown, they vanish away, but the houses of the righteous remain. So that's just another instance. And there's multiple times in Proverbs it talks about that. Um. Okay, it looks like there's a little bit extra here in verse 13. The sins of his lips, a sinner falls into a snare, but the righteous escapes from them. So it says here, he whose looks are gentle shall be pitied, but he that contends in the gates will afflict souls. Okay. This is a big one here. The ways of fools are right in their own eyes, but a wise man hearkens to counsels. And I would assume that this is not just talking about seeking Yahuwah's counsel, even though, obviously that's the primary counsel we should be seeking. But I would assume this means even listening to counsel of other brothers and sisters, I would assume as well. Fool declares his wrath the same day. A prudent man hides his own disgrace. A righteous man declares the open truth, but an unrighteous witness is deceitful. Some wound as they speak like swords, but the tongues of the wise heal. Okay, true lips establish witness. See, truth lips establish a witness, but hasty witnesses have a unrighteous tongue. There's deceit in the heart of him that imagines evil, but they that love peace shall rejoice. No unrighteousness will please a righteous man, but the wicked will be filled with mischief. And this is the thing here. This is how you discern between, Yahuwah's people and the world. We might fall, we might screw up, but we don't take pleasure in screwing up. We don't take pleasure in unrighteousness. So that's what that's talking about. Lying lips are abomination to Yahuwah, but he that deals trustworthily is accepted with him. The understanding man is a throne of wisdom, but the heart of fools shall easily obtain rule, but the deceitful shall be for a prey. It talks about terrible word troubles the heart of a righteous man, but a tube message rejoices him. Let's see. Okay. So it talks about the way of wicked men shall lead them astray. This is interesting. It says a deceitful man shall not catch any game, meaning, like deer, venison, but a blameless man is a precious possession. So this would show that Yahuwah even gives success to hunting. That Yahuwah's baraka is not on the wicked even when they're hunting for food, it would seem like, because it says a deceitful man shall catch no game. In the ways of righteousness is life, but the ways of those that remember injuries or offenses lead to death. So this shows us that we should have a very short memory when we get offended by someone. Especially, I would assume this is talking about a fellow brother or sister. We should, like, if we catch offenses, we should be able to mend them. Those that remember injuries lead to death. So that's kind of interesting verse there. Other than that, I think that's it for chapter 12, right? So let's see here. We got 13 here. All right. I'll try to take a stab at 13 for us and finish us off here. Let's see here. A wise son is obedient to his father, but a disobedient son will be destroyed. No, a good a two man shall eat of the fruits of righteousness, but no. but the lives of transgressors shall perish before their time. He that keeps his own mouth keeps his own life, but he that is hasty with his lips shall bring terror upon himself. Every slothful man desires, but the hands of the active are diligent. A righteous man hates an unrighteous word. A righteous man hates an unrighteous word, but the wicked man is ashamed and will have no confidence. Okay, so there's no verse 6 in this version. Okay. There are some who have nothing, enrich themselves, and there are some who bring themselves down in the midst of much wealth. A man's own wealth is the ransom of his life, but the poor endures no threat, or not threatening. The righteous always has light, but the light of the wicked is quenched. Crafty souls go astray in sins, but righteous men pity and are merciful. A bad man does evil with insolence, but they that are right rulers of themselves are wise. Wealth gotten hastily with lawlessness is diminished, but he that gathers for himself will, with righteousness shall be increased. The righteous are merciful and lend, but better is he that begins to help heartily, and that he that promises and lends to another to expectation, for two desires a tree of life. He that slights a matter shall be slighted of it, but he that fears the commandment has health of soul. To a crafty son there shall be nothing to, but a wise servant shall have prosperous doings, and his way shall be directed aright. The law of the wise is a fountain of life, but the man void of understanding shall die by a snare. Sound discretion gives favor. No, it gives favor, and to know the law is part of a sound understanding. But the ways of scorners tend to destruction. Now, it's interesting here in verse 15. This is almost like a reference from Paul in other places in Proverbs, where it talks about to know the law is the character of a sound mind. So we see here again, it talks about to know the law is part of a sound understanding. So when it talks about, we don't have a spirit of fear,
Right.
but of a sound mind. So you see here in Proverbs 13, verse 15, Paul might have been referencing this, or possibly referencing Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10, which almost says the same thing. So every prudent man acts with knowledge, but the fool displays his own mischief. A rash king shall fall into mischief, but a wise messenger shall deliver him. Instruction removes poverty and disgrace, but he that attends to reproof shall be honored. The desires of the righteous gladden the soul, but the works of the wicked are far from knowledge. If you walk with the wise men, you shall be wise, but if you walk with fools, he that walks with fools shall be known. Evil shall pursue sinners, but two shall overtake the righteous. A tube man shall inherit children's children, and the wealth of the wicked men is laid up for the righteous. The righteous, no. No. The righteous shall spend many years in wealth, but the many years in wealth, so the righteous shall spend many years in wealth, but the unrighteous shall perish suddenly. He that spares the rod hates his son, but he that loves carefully chastens him. A righteous man eats and satisfies the soul, but the souls of the wicked are in want. So those two verses there, I think the last verse is talking about gluttony, if I'm not mistaken. And then the prior to the last verse, I think, is talking about, withholding discipline. So those that don't discipline their children while they're younger, they most likely will get spoiled. They will not respect their parents. Most likely those that, I think even in America, in this modern world, we have that concept of, when you don't discipline your children and then they end up turning out to not respect you, lead very sinful lives. So a lot of that has to do with discipline. A lot of that has to do with how they're raised. Not saying that every person that's raised in Torah doesn't way, because there are, obviously exceptions and stuff like that. But if you're letting your child do whatever they want when you're supposed to be raising them when they're very young, that's how they're going to turn out. However you're raising them is usually how they turn out. Unless the father intervenes, unless Yahuwah intervenes, unless Yahusha intervenes, that's usually how they turn out. So discipline is a very big thing. It's a very important thing to do, raising children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's the end of today's study, unless we have anything else to add here. I mean, a lot of this is kind of the same thread we've been going through the past couple of chapters. Let's see. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, I was just double checking, guys, just to see if we missed anything. Again, there's a lot of stuff in this chapter about, disobedient children. Sinning with your mouth. I noticed what Solomon talked about a lot was really about slothfulness.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be the main author in scripture that talks about laziness, from what I remember.
Yeah.
You don't see many other authors of scripture focus on that main sin of laziness and not wanting to work. I mean, yeah, you got Paul, but I think a lot of what Paul quotes from is Solomon, if I'm not mistaken. So he doesn't get that of his own.
Yeah, which is interesting. But of course, he's inspired by Father. But how much do you think in Solomon's life was he around people like that? I mean, it's.
Yeah,
I would have to say it's the inspiration that he's getting from.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely inspiration. Definitely that. So yeah, I think that's about it for today. We got so that was Proverbs 11 to 13. There was a couple of key differences there, but I think for the most part, whatever scripture everyone was reading from, we got the gist of it. So Yahuwah willing, guys, we'll see you next time, next Shabbat, and to all of our brothers and sisters out there that we won't see between the other feasts. Just want to again say have a great feast season in Yahuwah and Yahusha. I just want to say for all of our brothers and sisters, I hope everyone has a very solemn full Yom Kippur next week, or a little bit more than a week from now. And then also a very joyful following that at the end of the month, a very joyful Sukkot. So, as I always say, if you guys are any brothers and sisters looking for fellowship, please reach out. And to all the viewers and listeners out there, like I always say, go home.